Hey, this is Sandy.
And Randy.
And we're here on AT Corner.
Being an athlete trainer comes with ups and downs, and we're here to showcase it all.
Join us as we share our world in sports medicine.
Welcome back to another episode of AT Corner. For this week's episode, we are going to be bringing another CEU episode, and we're going to be talking about technology.
Just like this podcast.
Actually, yeah, I didn't think of it that way. You're right.
Yeah, athletic training didn't always have podcasts.
You're right.
So speaking of podcasts, this is a CEU podcast. So like Randy said, thank you so much to Athletic Training Chat and Clinically Press for making this a CEU. If you are interested in claiming your free Category A CEU, as you're listening to this, go to clinicallypress.org/courses. I believe it's down in the show notes below for the exact link. And you can just complete the quiz and the course evaluation, and then you'll get your certificate. If you're listening to this at a later date than when it comes out, you can still purchase it for that certificate.
Absolutely. So, for this episode, we are going to be particularly talking about smartphones, right? That's the actual technology that we're going to be talking about. So, we're going to discuss the various smartphone applications that can be applied into the clinic. We'll discuss their validity and reliability on actually do they do what they say they're supposed to be doing. And then we'll actually describe some of just kind of some clinical applications and even like maybe some tips on kind of implementing some of these applications into your practice.
Something right at your fingertips.
Yes, exactly. And that's the theme of what this is, right? So what does that, like, how can we actually apply a smartphone into clinical practice? I feel like not a lot of people think of this, of like, oh, how can I use this thing? Or like, what is this thing actually capable of? And
I feel like more people, sorry to interrupt you, are like, I don't want to use my phone to take notes or anything because it looks like I'm just playing on my phone or just on my phone.
Yes.
Instead of, doing whatever I need to do.
Yeah, seriously. I think like checking email or something like that. Like it looks... You're right. There's still that perception of like, oh, that looks bad.
Like even Stay Crafty has a sticker that says, I'm not texting, I'm documenting. I think that's what it says.
Ooh, that's good. That's funny. Right. But like, kind of like what you were alluding to, right? Technology like continues to advance just how we practice as athletic trainers like that, right? Now, like instead of documenting on paper or having to sit at a computer, right? Theoretically, you can do some documentation on your phone now, right? And again, the whole idea of that, the whole goal of technology in general is to make us more efficient, right? It's supposed to help us like make our jobs easier, right? Like again, documenting now is just, it's never easier, but it's a little bit easier than probably what it used to be because it's a little more accessible.
Right, right.
And now they have like AI apps that can listen to your eval and stuff like that and like document it for you.
Right.
That's crazy.
I mean, just like we were talking to Chad Starkey and he was talking about how AI is basically like when people said there was a, you do math by yourself or you use a calculator.
The calculator is going to be the end of the world.
Right. And it wasn't. So
you know what? We're still here.
So how do we use this technology to actually help us?
Yes. And you know what? Again, the whole goal of technology is to provide us with quote unquote accurate objective data, right? It's actually supposed to give us something that like, hey, this is a true measure of what we're looking at, whatever you're trying to evaluate. So the idea is, hey, you should be able to make a better clinical decision based on better data. But the problem that we've kind of seen with technology in like sports medicine or even like performance is it's always associated with this like huge cost, or it's not really accessible. You need like 10 cameras, you need this big space and like all this stuff. And you read the research and like they have like all these parameters and you're just like, holy smokes, when am I ever going to be able to do that? All right. Or like even like strength testing, right? Isokinetic machine. And there's a certain way to do it. You got to set them up and like, holy smokes, that's expensive. And it's not very feasible for the everyday clinician. And then even if you actually have all that stuff or access to it, right, just getting the footage is not good enough. You have to actually be able to, okay, now you have to process the data. You have to analyze it and like actually get the computer to know what's going on. And there's literally degrees to do this.
Right.
So it's not feasible for like a clinician to sit there and do that. All right, so where we're at today is really being able to bring that technology to the actual clinician. All right, so over the past decade, I would say a lot of that technology of actually like video cameras and like biomechanics, like all the fancy marker stuff, is getting a lot more accessible to the clinician.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and I think where we really see this at is that fancy supercomputer that's at your fingertips all the time. Right. And I think most people really don't focus or appreciate what our smartphones are actually able to do for our practice. Like I said, I think most people feel like it's a communication device, right? I can email, I can text.
You can do like your concussion tests if you have like an app or something.
Yeah.
Like you use it for a timer, right?
Yeah. But it can actually do a lot more. And there are applications within whatever smartphone you have's like application store. Right, there's actually stuff that can be clinically useful. All right, so before we actually dive in on like what some of these apps are or like what it can be used for, it's still important to understand how are our phones even able to do this. And I feel like, again, that really gives you an appreciation of what these devices can do and like how powerful they are and how accurate they actually are.
Mm-hmm.
So our phones have accelerometers and gyroscopes in them. Right, so basically what that does is it helps kind of determines where the position of the phone is and its movement. Right, so if the phone's like moving at a certain speed or moving in a certain direction, right? So when you think of that, think of maybe measuring joint angles, question mark, right? That's one way that these phones are able to do that. And again, those accelerometers and gyroscopes are actually very accurate. But I think what most people kind of start to gravitate towards when we start talking about like, oh, the phone can do fancy things is the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And of course, this is what most people make fun of iPhone for is like they'll create a new iPhone and throw an extra camera on there. And they're like, oh, the camera just got a hair better. But really, these cameras are pretty darn good. Right. They're getting pretty close to just like the same like digital camera, like expensive thing you'd get at like Best Buy.
And let me tell you, the space on the phone camera is like a lot better than the space like of our, for example, our podcast camera, because that has like the amount of gigabytes that it takes up. The compression on the phone is so much better.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so these cameras are very high quality in your phone, even though we drop our phones all the time. But another key aspect of the camera is how it samples, like so how many frames it's actually taking in a video. And this is what makes those really expensive setups very important, because when the computer or when you are analyzing movement, you're analyzing it by frame, right? So the more frames that you have, the better you are at capturing the motion. And most of these like expensive, like 10 camera system and like biomechanical studies, they film at a frequency of 240 hertz. So that's basically 240 frames per second.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. You want to know what's crazy? Your slow motion camera in your phone samples at 240 hertz.
Well, that sounds perfect.
It's literally the equivalent of what these biomechanical studies sample at. So you have that literally in your pocket.
Okay, sweet.
At all times. So
how do we use it?
Exactly. So how does this even translate to my practice?
Mm-hmm.
Well, like we alluded to, you could do range of motion testing, and there are goniometer apps. Literally, you can like go into an app store and type in goniometer, and you're going to get like 5 of them.
So I've used the level as a goniometer, the level on the iPhone.
Okay. Which I think that's a valid way.
Which I have found it helps if you are starting at something that's like 90 or 0.
Uh-huh.
But anything that, like, for example, I was trying to use it for hamstring return to play and hamstring range of motion tests. And I was trying to do one that it's called the MH fake. I don't know how to say it, but
yeah.
Maximal hip flexion active knee extension.
Yeah.
I call it the MH fake. I don't know how to. But you bring their knee all the way into their chest, and then you have them extend their knee. Sorry, yeah, bring their knee all the way to the chest. Yep. And so they're in maximal hip flexion. And I found that it was, like putting the level app on their shin and measuring that. I found that it was a lot harder to like subtract the numbers rather than the active knee extension test that I was doing, where we started of a hip flexion at 90 degrees and had them knee extend. And so just like that math was like a lot easier than the math that didn't start like at a 0 or 90. So I'm sure a goniometer app would be a lot better than that.
Yeah, because I was saying I've used it. The app that I use isn't supported anymore. Like I don't know what happened. It was really actually pretty simple to use. I'm really bummed out. But yeah, it was a lot easier. Like it literally acted like a goniometer. You'd put it on the movement part that you're trying to do and get your joint angle right through that way. So yeah, there are plenty of goniometer apps that you can look at. Another one, a lot of kind of apps are geared towards like biomechanics. So there's a lot of different ones that measure certain biomechanics. One thing that's really becoming common, and not necessarily the center of this episode, is markerless motion capture.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. So like anytime we think of biomechanics, most people commonly think of, the markers, right? The dots on people, right? All that is really for the cameras to pick up that joint's movement, right? That's all those markers are for. But again, what that requires is you basically film and you tell the computer this is what this marker means, and then it just tracks it. Markerless motion capture is basically artificial intelligence looks at the video and the image and is able to say, oh, that's a shoulder, and now I'm going to watch that shoulder as it moves.
Oh, that's cool.
Right? There are applications that do that. Crazy. Right? There's also another app specifically, and again, we're not trying to advertise for certain apps. This is just one that I've used in the past, and it is validated. They actually did study on this particular app, is Runmatic. And it's really geared towards actually looking at someone's like gait mechanics for running. So it can like calculate like stiffness and like flight time and all that stuff, right? Specific towards kind of running gait. And so it's called Runmatic. I've used that one in the past. That one's pretty cool.
I gotta check that out.
Yeah, it's actually pretty dope. It's actually pretty intuitive. Another aspect that I don't think a lot of people think about is it could be used for strength testing. Not all strength testing. There's actually one app in particular that looks at hamstring strength, and it basically calculates hamstring eccentric strength using the Nordic hamstring curl.
How?
We will talk about it a little bit more, so it might be redundant, but what it does is you basically film them doing the Nordic hamstring curl, and basically the angle at which point like they can't hold it anymore and they fail. Based on that break point angle, it goes through an equation to estimate their eccentric strength.
Interesting.
I know. It's pretty cool. I've used that one before.
Do you feel like it was user-friendly?
Yes.
That's another thing about like using apps is I feel like sometimes there are so many things at our fingertips, but we just don't necessarily know how to use them. And if we don't know how to use them, like it's hard to implement.
For sure. So the nice thing with these apps, especially like the Runmatic and this Nordic hamstring curl one, and then the next one I'm going to talk about, it's very user friendly. Like the problem with like a lot of video analysis is not capturing the video, but processing the videos. So you actually have to like, I have to identify this body part and make sure this looked good and like stuff like that. These apps pretty much take most of that out. The only processing that you really have to do for like the Nordic hamstring curl is label which one's the ankle joint, where's the knee joint, where's the hip joint, because it has to create that angle. That's it. And then the computer or the application does the rest. Right? Or like for the Runmatic, right? You have to define in your video when does the foot hit the ground and when does the foot leave the ground. Right? So still some processing has to be done. I think in the future, right, more of these apps will use AI to do that. So then literally it's you pointing a video, recording it, and then it'll analyze it for you.
Probably real time too.
Probably real. And actually, yeah, there is an app that has looked at. That's funny you brought that up. There is an app that has looked at velocity training and like actually able to do it in real time. So you like say you're doing a bench press, and this is what the study did. They did bench press, and they had the camera watching the bench press, and the camera's able to determine the velocity and actually let you know real time how your velocity is doing, if there's any change in velocity throughout the workout. And crazy. But yeah, I think over time it'll be real time stuff. And then another one that's kind of been looked at is like for power, and in particular vertical jump performance. So there is an app that can actually tell you what your vertical jump would be and how much power you're doing just by videoing the actual jump. Again, there's the processing part where you literally just have to go in and be like, that's when their foot left the ground. That's when it came back on the ground.
Right.
All right. So still an element of processing, but when you look at what those high quality 10 camera systems have to do, this is very simple.
Yeah. I mean, and you're not solving any problems with this. You're just using it as a part of your
clinical tool.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now that you kind of have an idea of what apps are out there, what they can kind of do they even work, right? Should we even do I bother even getting this app and bother pulling out my phone for this stuff? And actually what's crazy is the evidence behind it's very solid, right? A lot of these apps perform very identical to the gold standard methods of whatever method they're kind of looking at.
That's really nice.
Yeah. So like for goniometers, it's like comparing to an inclinometer or an actual universal goniometer.
So that's actually why I started doing it, was because I was going to have a lot of our students and other athletic trainers measuring all these hamstrings. And so I was just trying to figure out a more objective way. And I figured what would be more objective than a phone, measuring. But again, then I found it's your starting point. So as long as you're cognizant of some of these confounding factors, I think you can manage them.
Yeah. And I think the nice thing with okay, now let's look at the goniometers is especially goniometer and range of motion. I feel it's not a hot topic, but I feel it's one of those things where we're constantly told as a profession, especially students who are getting ready to transition to practice, that oh, you need to use the goniometer,
right.
objective data in your practice, which it is very important, right? But a goniometer can be time consuming.
It can be so time consuming.
And it's because
sorry to interrupt you, but again, I think the phone is just a lot faster. You just put it on their shin, and then they extend their knee, and you just look at the number.
Yeah. Whereas the goniometer, you have to make sure you line up the axis of rotation. Make sure the axis is where it should be, right? Make sure the stationary arm is lined up correctly, and then you make sure the movement arm's lined up correctly, and then do the motion.
Right.
Right? So it's yes, theoretically, that doesn't take that much time. I heard someone one time brought up oh, everyone should be doing it. It only takes a few seconds to do it. I'm that was coming from someone who's more research based. Yes, you probably do it all the time.
Right.
But in the clinic, when you have 50 people waiting for you,
right,
those few seconds are going to add up. And then, of course, when we eval, you should be getting multiple areas evaluated, right? So now I'm going to take a few seconds on knee range of motion, then ankle range of motion, then hip range of motion for a knee eval.
Right.
Right? Because all those could influence the knee. All right. So I think there needs to be a more efficient way. And here's the possibility, right? Again, using the phone. It's a lot easier to set up. Boom. And they've actually been shown when compared to universal goniometer, so everyone's favorite circle and thing with wings, and inclinometer, it's very valid and reliable. And they're actually within 5 degrees of each other for most studies, right? Some are even less.
Nice.
Right. So again, when you think about a goniometer, I think this error for a goniometer is about 3 degrees. That's not bad to be that within each other. And this has been validated for the spine. So cervical, thoracic, and even lumbar, the hip, ankle, wrist, elbow, shoulder. It's all been validated to actually get those ranges of motion, right? So that's pretty huge. And so that's something, again, as we talk about, like, oh, as a profession, we need more objective data. Hey, here's a way that we can kind of make it a little more accessible and a little bit easier.
Right. That's what it sounds like.
Right. My thing with it, though, is like putting my phone on like other people's bodies. That's just...
I actually never thought, maybe because I'm putting it on their shin.
Yeah.
I like never really thought about that.
But I've kind of thought of some ways around it, like just put your phone in a bag. I don't know. I get kind of weird about it because I'm like, oh, now it's gonna be touching all these people.
Well, you could just put a towel on them and
That's
then
true.
put the phone right on the towel.
Good point.
I feel like your phone is actually pretty dirty anyway.
I know, but it's just weird to think of like I'm just touching it on all these people. But yeah, that's a good point. The towels. I never thought. I was actually gonna start putting it in a bag and like towels easier.
I don't think you have to be too extra.
Yeah, that's true. So now looking at more like the biomechanics stuff, and I think this is the really cool part, right? Because when we talk about like everyone wishes they could do like a biomechanical analysis on someone and have like all the 3D and all that fun stuff. But again, expensive, inaccessible, all that fun stuff. All right. So actually having an app that might be able to do that would be really, really cool. I think a lot of people would really buy in on that. So for the running specific one, right, that Runmatic app that I was kind of talking about, again, it was found reliable and valid when compared to like an instrumented treadmill. So a treadmill that, again, analyzes flight time, like forces and stuff like that. And the results actually showed a very close relationship. Like they were fairly identical. For the markerless motion capture, the article that I saw on this, and there's more stuff coming out on markerless motion capture, but there actually was a high correlation between a 2D image, right? So like the actual application filming and 3D motion capture. That's crazy. So
just with a regular video?
Just same, yeah. Same regular video. I think it was not necessarily regular, but like the slow motion video.
Okay.
So you needed that 240 frames per second. But same result, very similar results as 3D motion capture. The crazy part about this is it was able to estimate the sagittal plane motion very similarly to a 3D motion capture with the camera only filming in the frontal plane.
I don't know. One view is no view.
I know, but it was able to get similar results.
That's really good.
Or like fairly close.
Okay.
Fairly close.
Okay.
Again, within about 5 degrees. That's crazy. And I think one of the things there is it really shows you the power of AI and what it can do, because that's how it basically estimated what those angles would be. It did have like the angle progression was a little bit more variable, but for the most part, hip, knee looked pretty good.
Sure, both important joints.
Absolutely. And there's some other stuff. Again, this isn't really geared towards markerless motion capture, but there's also some stuff. I think Stanford has like an open one that you can do. I think it's OpenCap, I think it's called. That literally all you need are 2 video angles. And you can like get it analyzed through this thing for free. And it'll do all that for you just from 2 angles. So even that is still more accessible than the whole 10 camera deal. Right. So kind of shifting away from like the actual biomechanics, now going into, again, the strength. We already kind of alluded to it, but using that Nordic hamstring curl app, it actually is valid compared to isokinetic testing to quantify eccentric hamstring strength. So again, that's really cool considering like most time gold standard for strength is isokinetic testing. You have an app that all you have to do is film someone doing a Nordic hamstring curl, hit a couple buttons, and now you can quantify here's what their hamstring strength is.
See, if you tell me the day that I can use my phone as a muscle dynamometer, that would be cool.
Yeah, basically you can right there. Of course, the limitation is the Nordic hamstring curl is a bilateral exercise. So you're basically quantifying the strength the total strength of both hamstrings.
So all you're telling me is we need to have our athletes be doing single leg Nordic hamstring curls.
So what's crazy is in this app, there actually is a way, I think it can test single leg. So then you can then quantify each leg.
Can you even do a single leg hamstring?
That's what I said. I was like, that's cool, but I don't think any of my kids would be able to do that.
Like, I'm pretty sure they'd pop their hamstring before
I'm pretty sure I would pop mine watching them do it. Right? So it is possible, but the app initially was for bilateral.
That's funny.
But it still does kind of tell you information. At least anything, it could help with progress. But yeah, I thought that was very interesting that it actually, again, could quantify eccentric strength similar to what an isoconnect machine could do. And then finally, power. And I think power, this one's a really good one. Especially because as we start looking at return to play testing, right, we have hop testing and all that stuff. But single leg vertical jump has been shown to be really crucial at looking at quad strength and ACL return to play. So again, that's kind of hard to do. Like, you need like a vertec to do that, and like who remembers even how to like calculate jump height from that? Right. Or you use a jump map, but that costs like $700, like, or a force plate, which is just, you might as well mortgage your house.
Yeah, exactly. Not accessible,
right? So now you have an app that like costs like $17, $18 that can film, and you can actually quantify someone's power and their jump height just from a video recording.
So the question is it a subscription?
So the app itself is not. At least when I got these apps, I haven't done the jump one yet. I want to. So I'm excited to actually try to get that one. But like the hamstring one, the running one, it was a one-time purchase. I believe the maker of this app is, they do have a newer set called, like, I think it's like the My Jump Lab or whatever, that has like all these apps all in one. I think that one's a subscription because it's using more AI. But I think
that's another limitation that we run into with all these technology, because before, like, you get rehab equipment, you buy it, and then it's whereas now, like, we're just running into like, oh, you want to use this technology, it's a subscription. You want to use this, it's a subscription. And like, you're not necessarily going to use, if you like, you want this big toolbox, right? And you're not going to necessarily use every single part of your toolbox every single day.
For sure.
So, and you're not going to, it's just a little bit more fluid, I would say, when you're using these things. And it's hard when there's a subscription, because like, those things are just going to keep adding up.
Yeah, no, for sure. So yeah, to my experience, the ones that I have were not subscription based. You literally nice. One-time purchase, and you have access to the whole thing. But yeah, so the actual jumping one, which again I think is My Jump, I think it's called, the one that I've seen, and the one that has been kind of analyzed in the literature. Basically what it does is you film them jump, and you basically tell the application, here's when the foot left the ground, and here's when it came back. And through that, it uses an equation to determine, oh, here's how much power they used, here's what their jump height was, stuff like that. And again, this has been valid and reliable compared to a jump mat or a force plate. Like, the relationship between the two was very close. Like, we're talking, like, if you remember from your stats class, like, your correlation statistic is the R statistic. It was like an R of like 0.9. Like, that's a darn near perfect relationship, right? So like, these are
supposed to be close to 1.
Yeah, 1 would indicate perfect. So these are like near perfect relationships that we're talking about for across a lot of these apps.
That's really good.
It's crazy to think just how powerful just our phones are. Of course, the app's doing the calculation. Like, this isn't a coding thing. Chad actually would probably know the coding.
Oh, I'm sure.
But that's basically what's happening, right? The coding and the equations, what giving us the number. But literally, it's making technology that seemed like, holy smokes, it's expensive, it's time consuming, just at our fingertips. And it's really cool to see. Some tips to actually like how can I actually use these apps? Because it's not as easy as just like point and shoot, right?
Right.
One of the biggest thing is if it's a video thing, right? If you're like recording something, make sure the camera's on a stable surface, right? Like make sure it's on a tripod, or like make sure it's really locked in between like books or something, like something that's going to keep it stable. Because if there's any movement on the camera, it's going to affect the quality of the video. And now your data is going to be affected because the video doesn't look great.
Right.
Right. So you get what you put in. Right. So make sure you're on a stable surface and it can actually like record stable, and just try and be consistent with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Don't try and hold the camera while you're doing it. That's not going to work. Right. Have like a tripod or something.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these apps still kind of need some processing. Like I said, like the Nordic hamstring one, right? You actually have to go in like after the video and like let the app know this is where their ankle joint is, this is where their knee is, this is where their hip is, so it knows how to measure. But again, when you compare to like what those 3D like assessments need, like that processing is way easier than the 3D models.
Well, also what I was going to say is like if I'm going to run a functional test on someone in person, I still have to calculate their differences by hand.
Yeah.
So even if this app needs some sort of processing, it needs my hands on something, it's going to be my hands on something that's a little bit less than me doing it by myself in person.
For sure. All right. So I think over time, as AI continues to get better and more integrated into our practices and our lives, I think AI will remedy this. And we already see it with the markerless motion, right? It's able to identify here's what a shoulder is and here's how the shoulder moves with these kind of movements. So I think AI will remedy that in the future. So hopefully it literally will just be, oh, I just filmed it and here are my numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it'll get there. The last one that I like is more of like a thought that I had is like, how does HIPAA play into this?
Absolutely.
Right. And like most of these apps, you really don't need the patient's face.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you could really just not film the face or just like crop it out before you upload the video into like the application.
Mm-hmm.
But like, so I would really just avoid filming the face of your patient. And like I said, you can even crop that out before because like a lot of them are literally looking at lower extremity.
Mm-hmm.
And you just need to calculate, when the foot touched the ground, right? We don't need to see people's face for that.
I mean, even if you did need to see their face, technically you could record anyone's gait. You could record anyone's jump height. You could record anyone's of these. Like, it's not like you're putting into a system like, oh, I'm looking for this injury and this is what happened and here's all the details.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
Definitely some good considerations.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it is all, like, a lot of this is all very accessible. It's just feeling comfortable enough to purchase the app and then trying to implement in your practice. And I think you could just start small and, like, start using it on, like, someone's return to play.
Mm-hmm. What are some apps that you like to use? Action item.
So I've used the Runmatic one. I used the Nordic hamstring curl one. I really liked those. I used the Nordic hamstring curl one a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really easy to do. It doesn't take long to actually test somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, my goniometer one went away. I liked that one. I think it was Goniometer Pro.
Mm-hmm.
That's gone.
That's a bummer.
I know, it makes me sad. But I am working on getting the My Jump one for doing jump height and power.
Mm-hmm.
So that one I'm excited for.
There's also like some postural control apps out there that you can. They like put a grid up so you can like see
posture eval.
Yeah, for posture eval. You can also I mean your standard staples like sway concussion or a sway medical that we use like for concussion.
Yeah.
Or what's the other one I'm thinking of? I mean, we didn't even talk about anatomy apps.
Yeah.
Anatomy apps are super helpful and you can like...
Educating patients.
Exactly.
This is what your sartorius looks like.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, technically, Blaze Pods has an app.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, a lot of
Blaze Pods is technology.
Yeah, a lot of those, like you said, kind of subscription things, or like some of these rehab tools, right? They have their app associated with it that you can monitor. Like you said, yeah, the Blaze Pods, because right, it can tell you the time.
You can
reaction
set.
time.
You can set like if there's like, let's say I'm working with someone on impulse control, like I can have like only 2 colors, so like red and blue, and then I'll tell them like only hit the red ones.
Yeah.
And then I can see their reaction time as they're doing it, and
That's
I can
so
see
cool.
how many times they missed, I can see how many times they hit. Like,
That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, even Normatechs now have an app.
Yeah, everything has that.
for like the recovery and stuff. I'm like, dude, like you said, everything has an app nowadays.
Yeah, but I think mostly I use the Level, Sway, and Blaze Pods.
Nice. I want Blaze Pods.
They're pretty cool.
I've heard.
We are not affiliated with them, so our true opinion. Actually, everything we share is our true opinion for advertising. Yeah. So
for sure. So Blaze Pods, if you're listening, I do want a pair or a set.
Just saying. What's your action item for this?
I would say these are all very accessible apps, and I think go ahead and start small and just try one. Right? Even if you're like, I don't want to pay $18 for an app, get a goniometer app. All right? Like try that, and like again, like be able to apply it, and now you can see how it's easy for me to get objective data instead of feeling the pressure if I have to pull out this whole thing and like line things up, and God, this takes forever, and then next thing you know, the goniometer goes flying.
Has that happened before?
No. Not to me.
In your head.
Not
in
for
your
me.
Head, yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that have wanted to destroy that thing.
So like we said before, this is a CEU episode. So if you're interested, head to Clinically Pressed website down in the show notes below so you can take the quiz and course evaluation for your certificate. If you want to look at the references for this it's on our website. So Randy's going to put those up there. If you guys are new, we do every episode as either CEUs, education episodes like this, where Randy reads a lot, and then we kind of take it into a conversational format. We also have interview episodes, and then we also have story episodes where we take stories from real life athletic trainers across various topics all around the world, and we bring them together to hear other people's experiences. This is a reporting year, so make sure you check out all of our CEU opportunities down below in the show notes, like I said before, and MedBridge if you'd like a subscription. Speaking of technology, they have on-demand CEUs, and it is a subscription, so you're good for a year, which is great because you have this cycle that you can start doing CEUs for, and then next cycle you can start doing CEUs for under the same subscription. So you can use just code ATCorner for $101 off.
Dope.
So other than that,
thank you for helping us showcase athletic training behind the tape. Bye.